Hello everyone and welcome back to another Baron's Den Top 10. And today I'm going to talk about the 10 things I want to see in the future of Blood Bowl. I had intended to do this video right at the beginning of the year as a bit of a New Year's resolution or new year, new start in Blood Bowl. What have we got for the future? And then life just happened and it's taken me till April to do this. But fortunately, absolutely zero things have happened in the world of Blood Bowl in that time anyway, so it may as well be the beginning of the year. We're still patiently waiting on some sort of reveal for the future of Blood Bowl. There's been a good 6-month gap since the Chaos Dwarfs came out, at least 6 months. So yes, there was no FAQ. There's been no releases. Is this because they're building up to a new edition, or is it because they're just gonna kill Blood Bowl? Take it out to the barn and hit it with a double barrel shotgun. Who knows? But anyway, these are my top 10 things that I want to see in the future of Blood Bowl. Okay, let's go to number 10. So number 10 is more coverage of tabletop Blood Bowl. I love watching Blood Bowl as much as I love playing it. And I love it when my games are featured as well. It's great to look back and to watch. And I've been fortunate enough with the Bonehead podcast to featured in some of their live games. A tournament that I went to that they were live streaming, and it is brilliant. It's also brilliant to see other people playing, different people playing, and people playing the actual the tabletop, the miniatures, the dice, seeing all that happening is great. Now the Bonehead podcast certainly are pioneers of it. They have their Monday Night Football. They've got a really good setup, and it's fantastic. But it'd just be nice to see more of it out there. I feel like there's a World Cup that happens. Could we not have some live streaming from there? There's the NAF Championships. There's all sorts of tabletop competitions across the world, and also Games Workshop. Why don't you have, like, you've got Warhammer Plus? Surely a good way to try and entice people into subscribing to Warhammer Plus would be to have like a weekly or a monthly. We have a Premier League of Blood Bowl with our staff, and each week we got another game, or each couple of weeks we had a game. You'd think that'd be a surefire hit, because I imagine a Blood Bowl game is easier to stream or to film than a tabletop game. And we have the battle reports, so I feel like we should have Blood Bowl match battle reports, but not just GW. I mean anyone. I'm sure they are out there. In fact, I know there are some out there, but to get the kind of quality that we want to see, it is difficult. I've thought about doing it, and then I can't keep my hands still, so I can't do shaky cam. I don't have the setup to have multiple cameras. So yeah, it's just Blood Bowl 3 or now for me at the moment. But yes, it would be great to see more coverage of actual tabletop Blood Bowl, and I'm hoping that Blood Bowl keeps gaining popularity. Then hopefully that's something that we could see in the future. Okay, and number 9 would be continued support from Games Workshop / Warhammer. I put / Warhammer because I think I don't even know if they're known as Games Workshop anymore, whether they've just become Warhammer. Certainly all the shops have become Warhammer. But yes, there's no denying, even the most ardent anti-GW fanatics, you cannot argue with the fact that since they brought Blood Bowl back, the popularity has spiked. And whilst I'm happy to admit that Blood Bowl survived because other people stepped in and kept it running all those years where Games Workshop didn't support it. But when they came back, it was a good thing, I think, for Blood Bowl, because it brought in so many more people playing it. The popularity has grown ever since. Then they had a second edition, and that kept the popularity going. And hopefully that continues. And to continue, what I mean by continued support is, I want to see new teams. I want to see the Teams of Legend finished. I wouldn't mind seeing a new edition. These are all things you're going to see cropping up in my top 10, and none of those will happen if Games Workshop give up on Blood Bowl again. So I'm hoping for continued support. Blood Bowl doesn't necessarily need it, but I just want it. Number 8. So this one might cause some controversy. Tweaks to the existing teams. One thing I think, with the possible exception of Chaos Dwarves, that Games Workshop has done well is they've improved teams. And when I say improved, they haven't necessarily made them better, and in some cases they've made them worse. But vampires, Norse, Amazons, potentially ogres and lizardmen as well. And I'd say necromantic. I think all of those teams have benefited from the tweaks. Like as a necromantic, big time necromantic player, I now fully converted to wraiths over wights. I love the wights when I'm playing undead, but in necromantic, my wraiths are two of my favourite pieces to use. I think they're brilliant, and they play right into the way I like to play. When I think about the ogres, all right, that was minimal change, but having a run punter was something that added a bit of interest. Same with the lizardmen, with the chameleon skinks, and then as time's gone on, they changed more things. I think the Norse now probably are slightly worse than they were, maybe the same, but they're more interesting. Having these Beerboars and these Valkyries makes it more interesting, whereas before we had a runner, a berserker, and the it was the other one that was very similar, and the thrower. And yeah, what we kind of did is we combined the runner and the thrower to become the Valkyrie, and we got a Beerboar, and I'm a big fan of that. So I'm bringing this up. Oh, obviously, better talk about Chaos Dwarves quickly. I think that's one time where they had a good intention, and it's just they've gone a bit too far. I think I'm one of those people who thinks Chaos Dwarves can survive without having tackle, the blockers having tackle, and I don't think the Flamesmiths are the end of the world. I think there is a place for them. But even I run out of excuses for the Sneaky Stabbers. I think that they are a real missed opportunity. So I'm not saying they get it right every single time, but I think that brings me on to what I think we should need to see in the future. I've just used these 3 as examples. These 2 date back to the very start of 2016. Orcs obviously came out in the start set, and Dwarves were one of the first teams to be released. And the game has obviously evolved since that time. We've started to see teams getting a bit of a nerf, or a bit of a power decrease. Now we know Dwarves and Orcs are both very effective in the current meta. So will we see tweaks to make them a little bit more manageable? I don't know. Personally, I would lower the number of blitzers or big uns, not both, but one of them, to just 0 to 2. Because I just think having both at 0 to 4 makes them powerful in today's version of Blood Bowl. And with the Dwarves, the blockers are insanely good, really, for linemen, I think. Yeah, they're slow and they can't dodge, but that's not what you want them to do. Block, tackle, thick skull with their armour makes them very good pieces. Is there something they look to do there to change? And I'm not all about nerfing them. They might be able to take away some of their huge strengths a little bit, but give them back in other areas. So maybe do something to help with the speed, perhaps, of these teams. Because I think that's what they've done well with other teams. They haven't just improved all the players, because that would see massive power creep. What they've done is they've tried to take something away and give it back in another way, just to make them a bit more interesting, a bit more fun to play with, or a bit more fun to play against. So yeah, I've put ogres here because I think teams like ogres and black orcs need a little bit more. They need another positional maybe. So I just think tweaks to the existing teams could be something to look for in the future. Okay, number 7, continue to develop BB3. Now, I'm not going to talk about BB3's launch. I think Blood Bowl 3's launch. I think a lot of people have said plenty about how the game launched. I was there from the start, and I've been waiting for the game to come out for so long. I was really excited about it, and it didn't come out well, but I was determined that it would get there with Blood Bowl 3, purely because I'd just invested so much of my excitement and hope into the game that I'll just refuse to give up on it. And I'm happy to say that persevered for a long time. It's actually in a really good place now. I think if anyone's not tried Blood Bowl 3 yet, but is a big fan of Blood Bowl, give it a go. If you're somebody who tried it at the beginning and then walked away straight away because you were not happy with what you had, and I can understand that, give it another go now, because I think it's in a good place. We've got up to, I think, at least 20 teams now. 21 teams maybe. So, yes, it's still not all of the teams, but I always hark back to this. Blood Bowl 2 never had all of the teams, and they came out slowly over time. Does that excuse us having to go back to square one with Blood Bowl 3? It's not for me to decide or to tell you. I'm just telling you the fact of, this is what we have had both with Blood Bowl 2 and Blood Bowl 1. I think it's developed well. I think it's developed slowly, but it has got to a point now where I think it's becoming really interesting. They're doing different game modes. They've got the Eternal League brewing up as well for people who don't fancy playing online. And I think there's it's going to be a good future for Blood Bowl 3. So yes, please, Cyanide, continue to develop Blood Bowl 3 to be the game we know it all can be. Number 6, the new edition. Okay, so I'm talking purely box set now, because I'm going to mention other things that come with the new edition. In fact, I already kind of had when I talked about the team tweaks. That might be something that happens with the new edition. But I'm talking specifically a box set. A £80 to £120, however much it costs. The box set that gives you the pitch, new teams. Do we want to see a new edition? I've put it 6th. I was going to put it like right near the top at first, and I thought, I don't need a new edition. I would like to see some of the things that comes with a new edition, so a few skill changes, some tweaks. I don't want a complete revamp. I just want tweaks. But it would be nice to have a nice shiny box, and particularly if it came with 2 new teams. I'm just saying that Cathay have just become a thing again in the old world, and they're in Total War, so, should they want to bring those to Blood Bowl, they might be a good fit for a starter set, depending, they're a human alternate, as we've had with Imperial Nobility and humans. Then I tried to think of an Orc alternate, and the first thing I came up to was Night Goblins with Squigs, and whilst I'd love a Squig team, I'm not sure that'd be an easy team for a starter set, and in particular, I don't really think Cathay and Night Goblins is a classic matchup that springs to mind, but Cathay Tzeentch would be very interesting, I think. Maybe not suited to brand new teams, or let's go with humans and orcs again. Let's have some new sculpts for those 2 teams. So yeah, I am hopeful that if there is a new edition, it isn't a complete rework of the whole rules again and tearing up what we've been having in 2020. I think 2020 has been a good edition, or second season as it's called on there. But there's a few things that just need to change for the benefit of the game. Only a few, but those could come with a new edition, and we can have a nice box set to go with that. Number 5, changes to star players. A big controversial one, this. Oh dear. Star players have upset quite a few people. So my memory was, I don't know about 2016, but certainly Blood Bowl in the 90s and noughties, you never saw star players really, because they were kind of overcosted, and so unless you were playing like a fluffy game or just a casual, let's have a laugh, you wouldn't see the star players. And then boom, 2020 came along, adjusted costs, and all of a sudden these star players were not only worth putting in, but in some cases borderline broken. 2 of them feature on this page. We've got Bomber Dribblesnot, who is so cheap it actually makes no sense to play the positional Goblin Bomber, because I think he's like 5k more and he's just infinitely better, and for 50k he's affordable for a lot of teams to put him in. And then over here you've got Hackflem Scuttlespike, famous for being absolutely brilliant for the low cost. I think, was he 180,000 to begin with? Ridiculous really. And then I've included the other 2 because you've got here Gretchen, bless her, who never gets taken because she's a whopping, is it 260, 250, something like that, £1,000, 1,000 gold pieces, sorry. And Yeah, what does she bring for that? Hardly anything. I'd love to see. I would be tempted to use her if she was in that bracket of 120 to 160. If she's in that bracket, all of a sudden she's not competing with the likes of Wilhelm Chaney and Ivan Deathshroud. She's then competing with Bryce the Slice. It's when you think, actually, would having this annoying Wraith-like player be better than just going for one bribe or one reroll, or even one wizard? Then it's a consideration. At the moment, with her current skill set, you just wouldn't consider her for the cost. And it's a similar story for the Swift Twins. Great players, actually, but they cost so much. When do elves have 320,000 knocking about? And even if you did, you wouldn't necessarily go for these two, because they're also giving you more of what you're good at. So you've either got to cheapen them a little bit, or you've got to give us a reason to take them. I don't know if there is at the moment. So yeah, I think tweaks need to be made to star players. Again, that could come with a new edition. I did wonder whether we'd see certainly cost changes in FAQs, with particularly Bomber, Hackflem and Gretchen. We did with Hackflem. He went up to 210. Still think he's undercosted. But nothing's happened with these two. We had some of them mega starred to help make them less attractive to certain tierings. But even so, I think there's more that we can do to help balance these star players, because they are great, they are fun, and they do give you interesting list building options. But I still think some of them are some of them are too good for their cost, and some of them just aren't worth taking for their cost. And it would be nice to have more options to make some of the bad ones better to compete with the others, and making some of the ridiculously over the top good ones more just good, so you actually don't just think, well, I may as well take him. It's like with me with Undead Necromantic. If I can get up to Cheney, I was always taking Cheney. And then Ivan Deathshroud came along, and now I have a choice, because I think either one of those can be good depending on what you want. But Frank just isn't worth taking, because he's actually more expensive than the other two, and he's probably worse. So it'd be good to just have a bit more of a balance of these star players. Number 4, rule revisions. Okay, so yes, I think with a new edition, having some of the rules tweaked is what I was talking about. And the main one for me is passing. And I'm not about getting rid of the passing stat. I wasn't against that. I think it's fine. I don't think anyone will be surprised by what I'm about to say, but it is to do with wildly inaccurate. It's annoying when it happens, and it's easy enough to put you off passing the ball in the first place. But also, I don't think it makes sense from a fluff point of view. If you're throwing the ball, even if you mess that throw up, unless it's like in that 1% You've Been Framed style. Sorry, You've Been Framed is a British TV show, if you don't understand what I mean by that. But unless it's that kind of complete mess up where the ball goes backwards, why would you be deviating from the spot the ball's thrown from? I think what we need to do is, if we're going to keep wildly inaccurate in, the ball needs to deviate from the square you're passing to. Because that's still going to probably be more inaccurate than the scattering. I suppose if you roll a 1, though, that it brings that level of randomness, because even a bad throw might randomly end up not being too bad. And I think deviating from the square you're passing to makes more sense. There's also a couple of other bits that I'd want to change to do with passing, but I think that's more skill based. So yeah, I think rules revision is another thing I'd love to see, particularly when it comes to passing, because I think that's the area where we need to make it more. We need to give more of an incentive. The other thing I think I'd do is perhaps linked to star player points. I think maybe giving star player points to, well, certainly giving star player points to a successful throw teammate, not just if you roll that 6. I wondered as well whether, I don't know if it's too hard to calculate, but potentially giving star player points to a throwing assist to encourage quick scoring. So if you throw the ball to a catcher and the catcher runs it in straight away, that the thrower would also get some star player points for that, just to encourage more of a fast, frenetic play, just to mix things up again. I don't know if that would work. Also, I still think fouling somebody into a casualty should get you, probably not 2, but maybe 1 star player point, because I feel like there's players who are good at fouling and they just don't get rewarded for it. They cause like multiple casualties every match and they don't get anything for it. So yeah, maybe 1 for a foul and 2, I think, for a surf. I think if you're clever enough to surf somebody off the pitch, I think the player that does the surfing should be the one who gets some star player points. So yeah, there's a few things I'd like to see revised with the rules. Number 3, finish the Teams of Legend and bring back Bretonnia and Slann. So there's only 2 left now. I think now they've gone this far, they can't stop with these 2 to go. I have a huge bone to pick with the High Elves as well, because they've always been my hated enemies. When my gateway game into the hobby was Manowar, and my brother had High Elves. We then graduated over to Warhammer Fantasy. I was Dwarves in Manowar, and then I decided to go for Goblins in Warhammer, because I got the box set with the Goblins and the Elves in, and he was High Elves. Guess what? My models all feared Elves, and we were rubbish against Elves. So my brother knew what he was doing there, didn't he? I then dabbled a little bit in 40k, and I played against Eldar with my Space Marines, although 40k never took for me. And then in Blood Bowl, I had a friend who had a High Elf team. So they've always been my mortal and hated enemies. So not having them in Blood Bowl is ridiculous. And I will say this about them: they should be like the original elves in the game. They were in the Season 1 Death Zone. Their rules were, so they weren't technically Team of Legend in 2016. They had rules. They just didn't have the model release. I feel like the Elven Union had the slot they should have had. They should have been like the 5th team released, and Elven Union should have been left later on. Sorry to those Elven Union players, but for me, Elven Union might be based on the older version when Blood Bowl was first starting out and they just had an elf team. I think Elven Union probably has more in common with that. But obviously, the more Warhammer Fantasy developed, we had our High Elf, Wood Elf, Dark Elf split, and that's what I want to see in Blood Bowl. I've got no problem with Elven Union as long as High Elves exist. So bring back High Elves. And I say this, I'm not, they're my enemies, but you can't play Blood Bowl without your enemies. So let's have them back. And obviously, being a Sylvanian Spotlight enthusiast, I like all of the undead teams, so having the Tomb Kings back as well would be nice. Especially now Old World's back and Tomb Kings were one of the big launch armies for that. And actually, the other big launch army for that were Bretonnians. Now, I know Imperial Nobility have stolen the old Bretonnian team with a few tweaks here and there, but I still think you could create a Bretonnian team. And I think we need to have a Bretonnian team. I think there's a strong theme there. It's another alternate human team, and I think those will be popular, and particularly if they're back in Old World. They're in Warhammer Total War. It'd be good to see them back. They're going to have to be different to what they were in Blood Bowl 2 because of the Imperial Nobility team, but there's enough design space, I think, to create another good human team, and that includes having Cathay and Kislev as well, but I'll get to those 2 later. And finally we have the Slann. Now I think Slann should just be released as they were and as they are on the NAF guidance. Don't think there's anything wrong with them. Let's get them back. Yes, I know Slann changed quite a bit from when they first started out, being these jumping frogs to being the big fat wizards, but I just think that's Blood Bowl, isn't it? The whole point of Blood Bowl is that it takes the Warhammer world and it puts a bit of a cartoony comedy twist on it. We see like zombies selling snacks. We see beastmen cheerleaders. So why would younger, fitter Slann jumping around playing Blood Bowl be strange for this setting? It wouldn't. So bring them back. Number 2, tweaks to the skills. So, on the whole, when you look at this list, you see a lot of skills. You'll see a number that nobody ever wants to use. Now, sometimes that is because you don't want to have to pay for them. But actually, some of them, if they were rolled in for free, aren't too bad. So, I'm going to draw your attention to this one. First of all, Fend. I never get excited about Fend. Given all the options you've got for General, I never choose Fend, really. However, it's actually quite a useful skill to have. But I'm never gonna pick it, probably. Maybe as the 4th or 5th skill on a lineman if you ever got that far. But there's just better skills to pick. Again, if you're a agile player and you're looking at the agility tree, you've got catch. Catch can be useful, especially if you've got a thrower on the ball. But even if you're going to do handoffs, I'm hardly ever picking it though, because there are other options that I want to go for, and that's the problem I feel. So I don't know how we tweak these skills to make them more attractive. Catch is probably a bad example because I probably would take catch on certain players, but there's plenty here that, like Fumblerooski. I can't even remember what Fumblerooski does. Is that the one where you put the ball on the floor, or is that's the one where you can run and put the ball down, and then I think it's safe pair of hands where you get knocked over. You can choose where the ball goes down, and then you've got running pass where you can run, pass, and run off. What I would suggest is, could you combine some of those skills? Certainly, I think Fumblerooski and safe pair of hands could just be combined, like they did with pass block and kick-off return, and it became on the ball. Now, on the ball is a skill that people take. It's a skill that people like to see on the players that get it for free, such as your chameleon skinks. It's a good skill now. Before, when it was two separate skills, it was less popular. The same could be said of those two. Why not combine Fumblerooski and safe pair of hands? You could put accurate and cannoneer back together. I'm not sure if that was too powerful or not. But certainly Cloudburster. I think you could put Cloudburster, safe pass, and there's another one as well. Oh no, maybe safe pass, and Cloudburster to make it harder for people to intercept your ball. That would make those two skills more appealing if you could combine them. So I think there's a number of ways you could make these skills a bit more interesting, and then it will give you a bit of design space to add some skills in. I had really wanted to also put regeneration into mutation. I'd love to be able to choose regeneration, but then it got me thinking, having regenerating Chaos Warriors and regenerating big guys who don't normally come with it could be a bit obscene, so maybe not. But it does make you think, could any of these traits make their way into mutations? Would some of them work? A lot of them wouldn't, and obviously you wouldn't want nega traits. Who's ever going to pick a nega trait? And actually, I think really it's only regeneration that you'd want. Projectile vomit would be funny if you could pick that one. But obviously we've also got rules like pick me up and hit and run. Now I think pick me up is very specific to the ball. You wouldn't see that as being something that you could learn. But hit and run, I know there's people out there that's going to say it would be overpowered to be able to give that as an agility skill. But it kind of makes sense that you'd be able to learn how to do that. Or certain players would be able to learn how to do that. So if an Amazon Blitzer can do it, why couldn't a Gutter Runner do it? Why couldn't a Nobility Blitzer do it? Do you know what I mean? There's, from a fluff point of view, it kind of makes sense to put hit and run into these skills to be learned. But I am fully admitting that might be too overpowered for some players. So that might be why they steer clear of that. But if you combine some skills, it does open up a bit of design space to come up with new skills, improve some of these lesser used ones, and also allow you to consider whether some of the newer stuff that's been created could then go into these lists. Okay, let's get to number 1. And number 1, what is the one thing that I want to see more than anything else in Blood Bowl? That is new teams. It always comes down to that. I love new teams. Every time we get one, I get excited. I was really over the moon with gnomes. Didn't expect that. Chaos Dwarves, this would be this was my prediction before, and I said I put Chaos Dwarves in my could be next, and it was. It wasn't exactly an inspired guess, given that they are one of the few Team of Legends left. But the gnomes, I had no idea gnomes were going to come. And because they did, it really opens up the options for some of these. So in case you were wondering, this is another video I did earlier in the year about new teams we could possibly see, and I ranked them all according to how likely they were to be seen. And I I think some of these now, given that we had gnomes, are possible. Now, one thing to bear in mind is Games Workshop might be really slowing down production. We talked about there might be a new edition. They might also be slowing Blood Bowl down and thinking, well, once we've done High Elves and Tomb Kings, let's call it a day again. On the other hand, they might invent one new team a year. They might slow it down to that kind of pace. So even so, over a few years, I'm hopeful that we'll at least get these ones. So finish off the Chaos ones, finish off the Teams of Legend, and add in Kislev and Cathay. I think that kind of makes sense for me. And if Blood Bowl finished with that, I'd be pretty happy. But then after that, it does open the door to some of these others that I've already spoken about, such as Bretonnia, such as Slan. And I think the things to keep an eye out for is the Old World, Warhammer the Old World, Warhammer Total War 3, and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, because gnomes became a thing again because of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. A lot more of their lore was developed through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and the writers there. And again, Warhammer the Old World, they are revisiting the world of legend that Blood Bowl was mirroring. So it makes sense that if things are okay to be used in Warhammer the Old World, then there's no reason why we shouldn't see them. Which is why we know Cathay are getting released later this year for Warhammer the Old World. Surely that means Cathay is now an option for Blood Bowl in the future. And of course, Warhammer Total War has already released armies that aren't going to make it into Old World straight away because they're focusing on a certain part of the world. But we have Vampire Pirates, the Vampire Coast. We have Kislev. We have the islands of Koresh and Ind. Okay, there's no armies there at the moment, but those land masses are there. So there's so much potential for new teams in Blood Bowl, and I don't think for a second we'll see all of them. Clearly, you can see from the headings, I don't really think we'll see these ones, unfortunately. I'd love to see some of them, but I don't think we will because of their positioning in these three areas. These ones are possible, but again, probably unlikely. Anything around here, I think, is possible. And when I put Greenskin tribes, that does include the likes of Night Goblins and Squigs or Forest Goblins, the Skaven with the different clans such as Pestilence and Scryer, and the Dwarf clans having the Engineer teams or the Slayer teams. I think that would be really good for the future of Blood Bowl, and it is the number one thing that I get most excited about and that I want to see. Okay, well that's my top 10 things that I want to see in the future of Blood Bowl, but please tell me what yours are. Is there anything you think I've missed that we should be looking forward to in the future? Is there anything that you can think of that should rate higher on my list? Please feel free to comment. I love reading all the comments, and I will always get back to people if I can. And yeah, if you've enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe as we have more Blood Bowl 3 videos, tier lists, top 10s, news, all to do with Blood Bowl, and maybe one day even venturing into Warhammer the Old World and Warhammer Total 3. We shall see. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.